Mounting and leveling a scope can seem like a huge undertaking. It does take patience and attention to detail. If you have neither, seek out the services of a professional gunsmith. Price of admission will be worth the show. But with a few simple tools, anyone can mount and level a scope and do it right. After the painstaking research on optics and mounting options, you want to be sure that your scope and the bore of your rifle are both pointing at the same point of aim on the target. Being able to do it yourself and mounting a scope brings a sense of accomplishment. My challenge was scoping the Ruger American Ranch rifle in 7.62 by 39mm caliber. This story is about the iterations of optics that I went through to get where I am, at least until something better comes along. It is also about range time with the rifle-scope combination that I have finally settled on, and some tools that help me maximize the combination. So, stay tuned. My aging eyes demand magnified optics. With the Ruger American Ranch, however, a magnified optic is essential, since the firearm does not have sights. At first, I decided to mount a Sight Mark Core HX 2-7 by 32mm Hog Hunter magnified optic on the Ruger American Ranch. Ruger provides a Weaver No. 46 rail on which to mount the rings and scope, and the Hog Hunter is one of my favorite scopes. It is a good 50-yard and in scope, but I wanted to stretch things out a bit. The Hog Hunter scope was replaced with the UTG 3-12 by 44 30mm compact scope, a scope that I had mounted on several firearms, including an MSR and high-point 10mm carbine. The scope just worked for me, and it worked for me on those firearms. While the Ruger American Ranch is for general use, I wanted to be able to see a bit further and a bit more, and a UTG 3-12 by 44 with adjustable objective afforded me that. So, a second UTG 3-12 by 44mm scope replaced the first scope, as this one was more of a standard length rather than compact. Problems occurred with both of the UTG scopes, however, and I was forced to look for a better scope. If your curiosity is running wild as to why, let me just say that both scopes ran out of elevation adjustment at 50 yards. I could not bring the elevation reticle down enough on both scopes to satisfy an initial bore sight. That was a wasted range day. So, I mounted a Nikon P223 scope, and while I had no issues using it at 50 yards, 100 yards, again, was a stretch for my old eyes. As I said, I need a bit more magnification than I did 20 years ago. Looking through my scope shelf, there was a Nikon ProStaff 3-9 by 40mm NP scope that I had taken off another firearm for whatever reason. Now, I have always liked the Nikon line of scopes, and it's sad that Nikon is no longer making optics for firearms. As you may tell by now, I am not into expensive optics, as inexpensive ones suit me just fine for my intended purposes for them. A quick search at the Gun University Scope Finder resulted in my ordering a set of Warren Maxima 1-inch medium horizontal scope rings of steel origin. For those who are interested, the model number is 501M. I also changed the number 46 Weaver rail to a 1913 Picatinny unit to standardize things and provide a better mount for scopes to come. And these rings would work with the new Picatinny mounting base on the Ruger Ranch. When the rings arrived, they were test fitted to the base and scope to ensure proper mounting. Next came gathering the necessary tools to mount the scope. The tools needed are few and simple, but it is critical that you have them. While normal tools can work, they run a real risk of damaging your optics. The worn scope rings use T10 torque screws for mounting. All screws must be torqued. That means a good inch-pound torque tool. I favor the Wheeler fat wrench myself. Screws for the ring base need to be tightened to 25 inch-pounds, while the screws for the ring caps need 10 to 15 inch-pounds of tightening. Also needed is a bubble leveling system. Again, Wheeler enters the picture with its level leveling system. Step 1. Secure the scope rings to the base at the recommended torque value provided by the manufacturer. Most rings are held secure between 35 to 45 inch-pounds. Step 2. Install the optic in the rings at the highest magnification. Don't completely secure the ring screws quite yet. Space the rings no closer than 3/8 inch from the magnification adjustment ring in the rear, and centered, or slightly forward of center on the tube in the front. Do not let the rings butt up against the mag ring, either side of the turret saddle or the objective bell. Step 3. Make sure your rifle is set to its highest magnification. With your rifle shouldered, you should have a full-sight picture with your head in a natural position. Move the rifle scope fore and aft in the mounts until that is achieved. Step 4. Place your rifle into your vise or secure work surface. In finding a flat spot on the scope, such as the base, place a level atop it and level out. Consider removing your turret cap. This will allow you to level as close to the turret adjustment screw as possible, providing the highest potential for accuracy and leveling. Place the level atop the turret and level out. Step 5. Incrementally tighten your scope ring screws to the recommended torque poundage, about 15 to 18 inch-pounds, without the use of any thread locker. If you are mounting horizontally split rings, be mindful of the gaps on either side of the rings, trying to keep them evenly spaced. If your rings are vertically split, it's possible you might need to fully tighten one side of the ring before moving on to the other. Now, let's take a look at my finished product. The Nikon ProStaff 3-9 by 40mm NP scope is a simple scope meant for simple duties. There are no mil dots, BDC points, illuminated reticles, or other sighting aids. A simple crosshair system that has worked for ages suits my simple needs for this simple rifle. Although it has a 1-inch body, it has exceptionally bright, high-resolution optics that results in an extremely bright sight picture. The adjustable diopter keeps that reticle crisp and clear. Multi-coated lenses boost light transmission up to 90%. There is a generous, consistent 3.6-inch eye relief that eliminates that never-popular scope brow look. Precise hand-turned 1/4 MOA clicks with positive click reticle adjustments get me zeroed in quicker and maintain my setting even with heavy recoil. It has versatile magnification for medium distances. The 3-9 times magnification offers me the flexibility to see the target at my desired distance. For me, this is a 100-yard rifle, and the scope does a fine job for me at that distance, and further, if need be. Enough about the scope. Let me expound on a tool that helps me get the projectile downrange accurately. Let's take a look at some initial ballistic data by viewing the Nikon Spot-On Ballistic Match Technology website. I have provided a link to the site in the description for those who are curious. First, I can select the Nikon scope that I am using. In this case, it is the ProStaff 329x40mm Nikoplex. Once selected, a reticle view displays with the range data, which will vary according to the selected scope and type of reticle. I'll tell you about that click here to optimize load button a bit later. Next, I select my ammunition, which is 7.62x39mm. And then select the manufacturer, which is Privy Partisan. Then I'll select the cartridge, which is 123 grain FMJ 2350 feet per second with a ballistic coefficient of 0.271. And you'll see in the load details that information is displayed. Next is select the target distance. Let's say that I want a 100-yard zero, but I am at my indoor range that limits the distance to 25 yards. I simply type in the values for my target distance, which is 25, and my zero distance, which is 100. I'll take the shot by clicking the fire button. The Set Your Sights to Shoot Information section tells me to set sights to shoot minus 0.46 inches low at 25 yards for a 100-yard zero. I'm going to change that in a bit. If I want to plug in atmospheric conditions, I click the Atmospheric Conditions button and an Atmospheric Conditions dashboard displays, where I can view and change conditions such as wind direction, altitude, temperature, barometric pressure, humidity, and wind drift settings. All those things that would affect a long-range shot, and sometimes even medium-range shots. For now, I'll adjust the temperature to 72 degrees and leave other values as they are. Clicking the Apply button to save the changes returns me to the main dashboard. Note that I can also change the magnification level of the scope, and the lower reticle subtension value will change. From this point, I can view ballistic reports by clicking the Generate Ballistic Report button to view 3 ballistic report options. The first option that I'll look at is the Field Reference Chart. This is a handy-dandy little chart that you can print out and or save the data to an Excel or text file and take to the field, thus the title. To return to the main dashboard, click the Close button. The second ballistic report that I want to look at is the ballistics report. The ballistic report tells me, in data format, almost everything that I need to know. For my purposes, I am going to change the range increment and maximum distance to 5-yard meter increment to a 100-yard meter distance. From the chart, I can see my key distances, the muzzle velocity, energy, path, drop, drift, the time it takes the bullet to impact the target, and the number of elevation adjustment clicks that I need to zero at the desired distance. For example, I've already established a zero at 100 yards, but I'm shooting at 25 yards. That would be the case in my indoor range. I need to adjust my elevation up 7 clicks to be zeroed at 25 yards. If it happens that I'm shooting at a target 50 yards distance, I would only need to adjust my elevation down one click to be zeroed at that distance. If it happens that I am shooting to a 100-yard target, I can simply add in or take out clicks as needed to return to a 100-yard zero. This is where a resettable scope zero is very handy, and the Nikon ProStaff 3x9x40mm scope has that. I can also select what detail I want, such as load details, sight settings, and atmospheric conditions by simply checking or unchecking those options. As before, I can print the chart or save it to an Excel or text file. I can also email the data to myself. Since I am a visual person, I want to see a graph. I can do a lot in this option. Change the type of graph that I wish to view, including velocity, energy, path, drop, drift, and time. I'm interested in viewing the path, so I select the option and also 10 yards, meters to 200 yards, meter range increment, and maximum range option. Clicking the Show Graph button displays the information. One interesting thing that I noted was a near zero at about 40 yards, and that the scope height is 1.5 inches, which is a nominal scope height. I can also view a perceived magic window, which tells me that I should be able to hit my target without changing my point of aim, somewhere between 25 and 118 yards or so. Magic window is roughly my minimum point-blank range and my maximum point-blank range. Now I want to change my target distance to 100 yards, since this will be my target distance at the outdoor range. Since my target and zero distance are the same, the Set Your Sights to Shoot tells me to shoot 0 inches at 100 yards for a 100-yard zero. That sounds pretty logical to me. I can do the same for, let's say, 50 yards, and click the Fire button, and again the information where I need to hit is instantly displayed. As before, I can view all the ballistic data that I want for each change by clicking the Generate Ballistic Reports button and available options. One last thing to cover, and I am out of here. That is the Click Here to Optimize Load button, just above the reticle image. First, I want to select Yes to the Do you want to optimize this Nikoplex scope for the selected load? Why wouldn't I? That's why I'm here. Now I need to select a set target vital zone value. Of course, I would like to impact 1 inch at 100 yards. Who wouldn't? That is not what this is about. I have a choice of target sizes, and I select my desired target size according to common animals that are hunted. Click the Vital Zone Info button, and I am presented with Vital Zone data for a number of hunted animals from varmint to moose. I'm going to use the small deer as my guide, and which has an 8.5 to 9 inch vital zone. I'm not going to mention that 8 inches is also the vital zone for another species. Now we'll close the guide and enter or select 8 for the set target vital zone value. Click the Apply button, and I am taken back to the main dashboard. Things have changed a bit. You can see that my zero has changed to 205 yards, with a reticle lower subtension range value now at 285 yards. Also, the Set Your Sights to Shoot information field tells me to set sights to shoot 3.61 inches high at 100 yards for a 205-yard zero. Point-blank range is at 241 yards. I can also dial down my elevation 14 clicks and go for center at 100 yards. If I want to return to a 100-yard zero, I simply dial up 14 clicks, effectively resetting my elevation knob back to zero. To summarize, using the Nikon spot-on sight provides a theoretical view of what you think is going to happen when you go to the range. However, we all know that theory and actual practice may differ. So, let's put theory to the test. Let's head to the outdoor range and use what I know. Today, I am at the Clybell Shooting Range that is located within the Charlie Elliott Wildlife Center in Mansfield, Georgia. The rifle range offers targets with electronic scoring at 25 yards, 50 yards, and 100 yards, which is perfect for my needs. Prior to filming, I set an initial bore sight at 25 yards with my Weaver bore sighting tool. I do know from the Nikon spot-on sight I needed to set the scope to shoot 0.14 inches high at 50 yards for a 100-yard zero. At my shaky best, I did so. Once I felt optimistic that I could get on paper at 100 yards, it was time to do so and readjust for zero at that distance. But if I did my part at the 50-yard distance, I should be on paper and close to center. I decided to bench rest the Ruger American Ranch at this point in an attempt to remove as much as me as possible. Once I was hitting as close to zero as I could, the Nikon elevation and windage turrets allow me to set the indicators to zero. That, in turn, allow me to add or remove clicks of elevation and windage to suit other distances and environmental conditions, while quickly allowing me to reset to my 100-yard zero. Normally, the elevation won't change, but environmental factors like wind, humidity, temperature, etc. can have an impact on both elevation and windage. In short, depending on the day, time, location, and other factors, only matter at the time you are shooting. I can return to the same target another day, and I may have to make some minor adjustments to hit the same target within my window of opportunity and within the 8-inch target zone, especially if I change ammunition. Once I was satisfied with what was happening at 100 yards, and I am never completely satisfied, it was time to remove the rest, use the bipod, and see what the Ruger American Ranch and I could do together. You can watch the results as we step forward, and sometimes back in the journey. The Nikon ProStaff 3-9x40 NP scope is a joy to look through. Clear glass and clear reticle. As long as I could hold that crosshair in the center of the target, the results were decent. As a general guide to set up a scope, the Nikon Spot On website that I presented previously is very useful, and even if your scope is not a Nikon, there is probably a Nikon scope similar to yours. I have used the magnification value of other scopes, set the ammunition type and manufacturer, set my zero and target distance, and have come away with some basic information that I could use, at least in theory. So let's see what kind of day I'm having with this rifle and scope combination. With a range day in the past, let me get back to the Ruger American Ranch in 7.62x39mm and the Nikon ProStaff 3-9x40mm scope. The rifle and scope combination works well for me. Now, if I could get myself to spend more time with them. But as you should be aware of by now, I have other fish to fry and other firearms to review, both long and short, and spending time with this combination will be sporadic at best. Overall, I am satisfied with the rifle scope combination, and I am glad that you stopped by so that I could share with you how I arrived at this point with the Ruger American Ranch in 7.62x39mm and the Nikon ProStaff 329x40mm scope. I know that this journey has not been as exciting as watching Jerry Miculek win national championships, or even watching a volleyball tournament at a nudist camp, but I hope that you found it interesting and somewhat educational. For now, I must regretfully end this chapter in the Range Road Chronicles, but I will return, and I hope that you will as well, because there are a lot of gun and gear reviews in the mill. Until we meet again, stay safe out there.